Well, ethical questions are swirling after Rolling Stone magazine releases a controversial interview. Actor and activist Sean Penn landed an interview back in October with the notorious drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. This while Guzman was on the run after escaping from a maximum security prison. Penn even allowed Guzman to approve the article before it was published, although Rolling Stone says Guzman requested no changes. Joining us now to talk about all this, Tammy Bruce, radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor. Alan Colmes, who's host of the Alan Colmes Show, nationally syndicated by Fox News Radio. So what do you think about what Sean Penn did here?
Well, it's an insult to the Mexican journalists who face death every day. 88 have been murdered over the last 2 decades because they've confronted the cartel's messages. They are under threat of death if they don't write what the cartels want them to write. To do their job, it is dangerous every single day. This is a farce. It makes a mockery of what Mexican journalists try to do every day. It's a highlight of our celebrity culture. It is a sympathetic article. It's not even you get access so you can write something decent. Giving him editorial control is extraordinary, but I don't think it's a good thing to say that the drug lord didn't need any changes when it came to what the supposed journalist was writing. So this is a fake journalist putting more journalists, I think, in danger, as more and more journalists, of course, are being murdered and being captured worldwide.
We'll get into the tone of it in a minute. What do you think of the overall article?
I think it's great. And the only problem I have is that you shouldn't give a subject prior approval. I've got a problem with that from an ethical standpoint. But Sean Penn's not a journalist, per se. He's, you know, an actor. The fact that he got this interview, the fact that we got more information, you're laughing at me, the fact that this actually led to the recapture of Guzman. So the end result is pretty good. And while you may not like everything about the interview or the fact that it even took place, a lot of information in that article gave us an insight into who this person is, how he thinks, you know, his lifestyle, and led to his ultimate capture. I think, and I applaud Sean Penn for doing it.
The article also let us know that Sean Penn believes that the war on drugs is an abject failure. But here is one of his lines. He's talking about how he expected to find El Chapo to be soulless. He says, soullessness, he writes, wasn't it that my moral conditioning was obliged to recognize in him? Wasn't it soullessness that I must perceive in him for myself to be perceived here as other than a Pollyanna, an apologist? I tried hard, folks. I really did. And I reminded myself over and over of the incredible life loss, the devastation existing in all corners of the narco world. This simple man from a simple place, surrounded by the simple affections of his sons to their father and his toward them, does not initially strike me as the big bad wolf of lore. The Mexican government would beg to differ.
Yeah, he also is an apologist and explaining, well, you know, sure, he has killed people, but only if it was really necessary. He's a businessman first, Sean Penn writes, and he resorts to that only when it would help his business. So you're looking at not just, again, having access to someone and doing a good job and trying to get information, but you're looking at somebody who's written a story that glorifies it, is sympathetic, and reinforces this idea that you will get access, or it's okay to do this in order to get access. Of course, as Alan's noted, he's not a journalist, but it's being presented as journalism. And that's the problem, especially when real journalists are being murdered because they won't do this kind of thing. And now there's more emphasis on you better, and that this is the way we should operate.
The fact that he knew going in that he was going to allow this guy to review the article before it was published.
Yeah, that was a problem.
All right, now, sure, he says he didn't ask for any changes, but doesn't it mean that, in all likelihood, Sean Penn goes into the article knowing he's going to throw softball questions like, do you have any dreams? And if you could change the world, would you? Those are two of the questions.
I don't agree with the fact that he had prior approval, but I think it's fascinating to get this kind of a bird's eye view of the thinking of this person. I'm not supporting what El Chapo does, be clear, but I think that Sean Penn, taking this, if I could just...
Don't we already know what El Chapo thinks?
Sean Penn, no, we actually know a lot more about him now, and this did lead to his capture. Overall, this is a positive. He's back in the realm of the authorities. They've got him. And we know more about, I think it's fascinating to know how these people think. Nobody else might have been able to get this interview. I applaud Sean Penn for doing it.
But still, whether it's how bin Laden thinks, or what El Chapo thinks, or what Charles Manson thinks, or what al-Baghdadi thinks, It's madness. It's criminality. It is mass murder and death.
Let's find out
but
about
the nature.
it.
Well, we know about it. This is not an unusual dynamic. He's actually not an unusual man when it comes to the nature of evil individuals. But I also think that this idea that we're getting an actual clear view of who this person is through this framework and through Sean Penn is also a bit of a farce.
There's no one clear view. People are complex.
But
we do have
farce.
a view we didn't have before, and I think that's a net positive.
The article even reached the realm of presidential politics. Some have suggested that Sean Penn should somehow be prosecuted for trying to conduct this interview. Here's what Senator Marco Rubio, presidential candidate on the GOP side, had to say.
If one of these American actors who have benefited from the greatness of this country, who have made money from our free enterprise system, want to go fawn all over a criminal and a drug trafficker in their interviews, they have a constitutional right to do it. I find it grotesque.
What do you think about that?
You may find it grotesque, but as long as Sean Penn or anybody in that position isn't getting in the way of the government doing its job, their job is not to be spokespeople to help the government, but as long as they're not getting in the way of the government prosecuting or finding these criminals, you're not in violation. There's no law that's been violated here.
All right. Looks like, to me, another black eye for Rolling Stone magazine, but you liked it, so perhaps their subscription base.
Well, and the dangers, I think, the real issue is journalists and the dangers they face, especially in Mexico. This makes things worse, I think.
He faced danger. Sean Penn faced danger doing that.
Tammy Bruce, Alan Combs, thank you both.